Hello again and welcome to the video. Still stuck at home, but I'm going to keep on creating videos, so thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about 6 views I hold that might be described as contrarian. Things you've probably heard great things about, but which I don't really rate. Plus a couple of things that you've probably heard bad things about that I really like. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So hit subscribe and perhaps you'll pick up some hacks, hints and tips to make your next trip better.
So let's get straight into it. First up, champagne. People love it, I don't. Of course, I always have some when it's offered to me, but I really don't know why I do. Champagne is associated with premium lounges and premium classes of travel, which is probably why I get excited about having a glass, right up to the point where I taste it and remember that I don't much like it. Give me a nice Rioja any day. So number 1 is champagne. Second up is places people rave about, but I don't think they're that good. And top of that list for me is Marrakesh in Morocco. I arrived in Marrakesh having already visited Tangier, Rabat, Casablanca and Fez, and compared to those places, Marrakesh is just a massive tourist trap. It was the first place we'd been where English was widely spoken, which is a pretty good clue as to a place's relationship with tourism. The central square, Jamar el Fanar, is cited as a highlight. During the day, it's jammed with people exploiting local animals to try and get money out of gullible and ill-informed tourists. And at night, it's jammed with locals cooking local animals to try and get more money out of the tourists via the overpriced food. There are certainly some gems hidden in those food stalls, and the way that they are built, operated and demolished each and every day certainly is quite interesting. But overall, the place is just a bit naff. So if you want an exotic-ish, warm, tourist-friendly experience in a place jammed with expensive boutiques, retail and hotels, then by all means go to Marrakesh. If, on the other hand, you want an authentic Moroccan experience, then go to Fez. Fez is amazing and it is everything Marrakesh is trying to be. I was going to include another couple of places in this category, but I think I might save that for another video. So this is a good opportunity to invite you to comment on this video and let me know if you'd like to see more of this sort of stuff. Also, please smash the like button, as I believe it is common to say, and subscribe if you're new. So number 3 on my list is a controversial one. It's Qatar Airlines Q Suites. Qatar launched its innovative Q Suite products in September 2017, and it certainly is innovative. It's a business class seat with a very high door that does close you off from the wider cabin and does provide unrivaled privacy. I agree with people who say it is more like a first class product than a business class product. I've flown it twice, and I also saw the product on a 777 parked up at the Farnborough Air Show a few years back, which is where these photos come from. And it certainly is an excellent product, but in pretty much every circumstance, I would probably choose another aircraft. The biggest plus point for many is the ability to configure seating into pairs or quads, which really is excellent when you're travelling in a group. But if you're travelling alone, as I generally do, it's irrelevant. The in-seat storage is great, the in-flight entertainment is large and very well positioned, and there is an additional menu available only on Q Suite flights. But it's all a bit claustrophobic. 2 ways in particular. When you go into bed mode, your feet go into a cubby that is very, very narrow and it is very, very shallow. I'm taller than average and that footwell does make it very, very cramped when sleeping. But the biggest problem for me is that you are confined to your own space. I quite like being able to see other passengers. I quite like seeing the crew pass through the cabin so I know what stage the service is at. And with such high walls, the crew can't see that your plate is cleared or that your glass is empty to assist. Not a problem for anyone unembarrassed to ding the service bell every 5 minutes, but that's just not me. So I don't think the service on a Q Suites flight is that good. If you're on an overnight flight, then that additional privacy may very well help with sleeping. Although for me, the tight footwell is an even bigger problem on an overnight flight than it is on a daytime one. I prefer Qatar's business seats that are much more open. They are still excellent business class seats, but they don't have the disadvantages of the Q suites. They create a more communal experience, which I think leads to better service. So number 3 on my list is Qatar's Q suites. An excellent product, don't get me wrong, but for a solo traveller who's as tall as I am, I don't think they're that great. I await your comments. 4th is low-cost carriers. Why pay more for a flight experience when you can save a bundle by flying someone cheap and cheerful? And although the in-flight service and ground handling may be limited, the stringent security regulations that everyone is subject to means that all airlines are going to be equally safe. But I am not a fan of false economies. All the savings that you might accumulate by travelling on a low-cost carrier may evaporate in an instant when something goes wrong, irregular operations as it's known, or IROPS. Low-cost carriers do not have the infrastructure, staffing, training, or perhaps even the will to support their customers in times of IROPS. Stories abound of passengers getting stranded, or worse, when low-cost carriers can't or choose not to help. They can very quickly forget that they are obligated to provide duty of care support and compensation, particularly at outstations. So I prefer to fly with premium carriers because I know that price premium is returned to you in improved service but also in real support when things go wrong. I do still fly with low-cost carriers, but I know my rights and how to enforce them. I do tend to stay away from high-risk low-cost flights, such as one to destinations that are irregularly served. If there's only one flight to a place a week and that flight is cancelled, what do you do? So number 4 on my list is low-cost carriers. Number 5 is places people generally don't rate, but I do. On top of that list is Los Angeles. If you've only ever been to New York, Boston and San Francisco, then I can understand why Los Angeles might not appeal. Compared to those places, it's flat, it's jammed full of cars, and it lacks any geographical or architectural focal points. But out of the 98% of the United States that isn't New York, Boston or San Francisco, then LA is pretty great. It has the film industry, a great climate, lots of tourist attractions and beaches, and it's only about 2 hours away from one of the world's truly great cities, which is San Diego. And if you avoid the rush hour, it's really not that hard to get around. So I like LA. Also on this mini list is Singapore, which is often panned for being dull and sterile. But it is a great place to visit, and it's a great place to base yourself to explore the region. And I'll throw in Doha too, regularly flown through by Qatar Airlines enthusiasts, but rarely explored, which is a shame because it has some fairly interesting things to do, and it is a far more authentic Arabian experience than you get in Dubai. And finally, number 6 on my list is Airbnb. Lots of people love them, but I don't. Let me explain. I've used them now 4 times. 2 were organised by friends and all I had to do was just show up, but I've had 2 bad experiences. The first was in Dubai at a time when their legality there was questionable, which is something that is surprisingly common with Airbnb's properties. My friend booked it and then received all sorts of instructions about what we could and could not say to the people at the accommodation. We also had to meet our host some distance off-site to pick up the keys. I'm not comfortable being expected to lie to people because I've unwittingly signed up to do something that is actually illegal. And that makes me deeply sceptical about the ethics and professionalism of Airbnb as a corporation. The second experience was also in Dubai a few years later, after their legality to operate there had been established. This was the first time that I had booked with them myself. When we arrived at the property, our host demanded that a cash deposit be paid before they would give us the keys. That felt wrong, but I had obviously not memorised every nuance of the Airbnb terms and conditions, and our host wouldn't give us the Wi-Fi password which would have allowed me to check. We travelled a long way and didn't really have the option of just walking away and finding alternative accommodation, so very grudgingly we handed over the cash. As soon as we got the Wi-Fi password, I checked the Airbnb website and found out that my instincts were correct and that this was completely against the rules. We immediately let the host know that they were wrong and demanded our cash back, but they then ignored us for the duration of our stay, using an agent to give us the cash back when we checked out. But what did Airbnb do? Absolutely nothing. I complained several times and eventually got an email back from them which actually blamed me for having given cash in contravention of the terms and conditions, which I thought was outrageous. The last time I checked, that host's properties were still on the Airbnb platform, giving her more opportunities to rip customers off that are delivered to her by Airbnb. And that's my problem with their business model. They sit as agents between the hosts and the guests and will always have one or other party to blame when something goes wrong. It will never be their fault. The money comes from guests, but money only circulates because hosts make their properties available. So I feel Airbnb is structured to always favour hosts over guests, which is in complete contrast to the normal customer service principle that the person paying for the service comes first. And that's why I don't trust Airbnb, so don't use them, and will take a lot of convincing before I use them again. It's actually a similar story with Uber, with whom I've also had an unacceptable number of bad experiences. I do still use Uber though, because a car ride is a trivial commitment that you can recover from easily if something goes wrong. It's a different story when you're talking about multiple nights accommodation overseas. I'm sure most hosts on Airbnb are honest and do a great job. There is definitely demand for what Airbnb and Uber provide. But as both companies have taken a very aggressive and controversial approach to growing their businesses, it makes it quite difficult for me to endorse either of them. So there you go, 6 areas where I'm a bit of a travel contrarian. I hope this has been interesting. I hope it's made you think a little bit about some of the choices that you might make when booking your future travel. And even if you disagree with me, I hope I've been able to explain why I've formed these opinions. I'd love to hear from you, so please leave me a comment if you agree or otherwise. Like this video because it really does help me out with the YouTube algorithm. And as always, please subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.